3 Americans freed from North Korea arrive near Washington Joint Base Andrews. MD 3 American prisoners freed from North Korea arrived here early Thursday to a personal welcome from President Trump, who traveled to an air base in the middle of the night to meet them, waving their hands and flashing peace signs. The freed prisoners Kim Dong-chul, Tony Kim, and Kim Hak-song descended the stairs of their plane, flanked by the president and senior administration officials, including Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who had flown to Pyongyang, the North's capital, to secure their release. Their return to the United States removed a delicate obstacle as the president prepares to sit down with the North's leader, Kim Jong-un, for a landmark nuclear summit meeting, as he is prone to do when it comes to negotiations with the North. He avoided striking a decisive tone. Hopefully everything is going to work out at the highest level, Mr. Trump said. He then issued a compliment to Mr. Kim. We want to thank Kim Jong-un, who really was excellent to these 3 incredible people. Mr. Trump, who spent the early part of his week frustrated by news reports about a continuing investigation into his presidential campaign's ties to Russia and faced with criticism from key European allies for withdrawing from the Iran nuclear deal, seemed eager to celebrate a foreign policy triumph. Vice President Mike Pence and his wife, Karen Pence, Mr. Pompeo, and the First Lady, Melania Trump, were among those who traveled to the base to welcome the 3 men. We're starting off on a new footing, Mr. Trump said of the release. That was a big thing, very important to me, and I really think we have a very good chance of doing something very meaningful. Hours earlier, Mr. Trump had mused on Twitter about barring the news media from future events because of displeasure over what he perceived to be negative coverage of his administration. But dozens of journalists assembled at the airbase early Thursday, training their cameras on Mr. Trump, the freed prisoners, and a large American flag that had been strung up on the tarmac. Asked by reporters about the men's return, Mr. Trump replied, "The true honor is going to be if we have a victory in getting rid of nuclear weapons." The arrival of the men in Maryland capped a whirlwind journey for Mr. Pompeo, who secured their release during a 13-hour visit to North Korea to arrange the summit meeting. The president spent the hours before their arrival in a celebratory mood. He mentioned in a cabinet meeting that everyone thinks he deserved the Nobel Peace Prize for overseeing the prisoners' release. "But I would never say it," Mr. Trump continued. "The prize I want is victory for the world." The president had also posted excitedly on Twitter that he planned to greet the hostages no longer upon their arrival. Their plane touched down just before 3 a.m. In a statement as they traveled to the United States, the prisoners said that they wanted to give their deep appreciation to the United States government, President Trump, Secretary Pompeo, and the people of the United States for bringing us home. "We thank God and all our families and friends who prayed for us and for our return," they said. Mr. Trump, who delivered on a long-held promise this week by ending the United States' involvement in the Iran nuclear deal, has sought to deliver on another by improving relations with North Korea after nearly 7 decades of mutual antagonism. Analysts are watching the negotiations closely to see if the return of the prisoners is a gesture of genuine goodwill from the North, or if Mr. Kim will ultimately use the release of the men as leverage for prolonging the time frame for reducing or completely dismantling North Korea's nuclear abilities. The date for the summit meeting has not been announced, but it is likely to be after President Moon Jae-in of South Korea visits the White House on May 22nd. As for where the meeting would be held, Mr. Trump has ruled out the demilitarized zone, the strip of land that divides North and South Korea. One option is Singapore, a neutral site. Other administrations, including President Barack Obama's, secured the release of imprisoned Americans without promising a summit meeting or improved diplomatic relations. Over the past week, Mr. Trump had criticized the Obama administration for failing to secure the release of the 3 men who had been held on charges of committing espionage or hostile acts against North Korea. 2 of them were taken prisoner after Mr. Trump took office. The 3 men include Kim Dong-chul, a businessman and naturalized American citizen from the Virginia suburbs of Washington. He had been sentenced to 10 years hard labor in April 2016 after being convicted of spying and other offenses. Tony Kim, also known as Kim Sang-duk, was arrested in April 2017 while trying to board a plane to leave the country. He had spent a month teaching accounting at a Christian-funded school, Pyongyang University of Science and Technology. Kim Hak-song, who volunteered at the school's agricultural research farm, was arrested in May 2017. According to CNN, he was born in China near the North Korean border and emigrated to the United States in the 1990s, later returning to China and eventually moving to Pyongyang. Speaking through a translator, one of the men recounted his time in captivity, describing long days in labor camps but adding that he had received medical treatment when needed. Their release bears a striking contrast to Otto F. Warmbier, the University of Virginia student who was returned to American custody in June after spending 17 months in captivity, much of it in a coma, in Pyongyang. He died days later. From the tarmac, Mr. Trump acknowledged Mr. Warmbier and his family. "I want to pay my warmest respects to the parents of Otto Warmbier," the president said, "who was a great young man who really suffered."